T. But here there is that the one?
Yes.
Yes, but
Okay.
here there is.
Right, I've got it. So we can start reading. I think we have not read it, so we'll read it first. Okay. So, any one of you decide and start reading.
Rangada, I will leave by 8:25. Okay.
Okay, you'll read next. Okay. So, who will start today? Archanari, start if you can.
Okay. Okay, Rangada, just.
But here there is.
But yes, but here there is this further difficulty that the action which Arjuna must do is one from which his moral sense recoils. It is his duty to fight, you say. But that duty has now become to his mind a terrible sin. How does it help him or solve his difficulty to tell him that he must do his duty disinterestedly, dispassionately? He will want to know which is his duty or how it can be his duty to destroy in a sanguinary massacre his kin, his race, and his country. He is told that he has right on his side. He has right on his side, but this does not and cannot satisfy him, because his very point is that the justice of his legal claim does not justify him in supporting it by a pitiless massacre destructive to the future of his nation. Is he then to act dispassionately in the sense of not caring whether it is a sin or what its consequences may be, so long as he does his duty as a soldier? That may be the teaching of a state, of politicians, of lawyers, of ethical causes, casuists. It can never be the teaching of a great religious and philosophical scripture which sets out to solve the problem of life and action from the very roots. And if that is what the Gita has to say on a most poignant moral and spiritual problem, we must put it out of the list of the world's scriptures and thrust it, if anywhere, then into a library of political science and ethical casuistry.
That last bit is full of irony. Okay, so we'll now. What has he said in the previous para? He has told that Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna, you are in a moral condition, and that is why you have a problem. See, you have a duty, and that duty itself is giving you a problem. So, you should not be in the moral condition. You should be in the condition where you are above the moral condition. In other words, you have to rise to the level of the higher mind, outside the mind. That's it, what he's saying. That's okay as an advice. But Sremda is saying, but there is a further difficulty. What is that difficulty? But here there is this further difficulty that the action which Arjuna must do is one in which his moral sense recoils. You are being told, do what the divine tells you to do, but he is not yet open to the divine, and his moral duty is you should not kill. Okay? This is one of the Geneva Conventions also now, that war going on with Russia and Ukraine. The unwritten code, or rather even it is written code in the Geneva Convention, that when there is war, you can attack military installations and soldiers, but not civilians. Okay? So here, even his, not only soldiers, but he is unwilling to even kill his own enemies, because his enemies are his own relatives. So he says, impossible. How can I do that? Whereas now Srimna is using very interesting language. Okay, he is saying you can answer this by other ways. So, it is his duty to fight, you say. Okay, it's a question. That means if you say that his moral sense recoils, somebody who is not agreeing with him will say, but it's your duty to do. Okay, what will you answer? What will he answer? That, so Arjuna will reply, but that duty has now become into his mind the most terrible sin. You are asking me to do my duty, and what is my duty? My duty as a Kshatriya, I have to kill the enemy. But that itself is a problem for me, because the enemies are not my enemies now, they are my own people. So I have a real problem. It's a very interesting situation which the Mahabharata tells you about. Okay, so sometimes you have to Kill your own friend. So, but if the divine tells you to do it, you have to do it. But he is not yet in that condition, so here's the problem. Okay. It is his duty to fight, you say. You tell him that, why are you not doing your duty? Fight. Then he will answer, but that duty itself has now become, to my mind, a terrible sin. How can I commit sin? Okay. So, how does it help him to solve his difficulty and to tell him that he must do his duty disinterestedly, dispassionately? So, you answer him again and say, no, do it without any feelings, do it without dispassionately. It is going to help him? It won't. Okay? That's what point. Now, there's the other day someone asked me, not someone, Shilpa asked me, duty. Now, what is duty? Okay, duty is mind-originated determination. When your mind says you have, it's your duty. Okay, the duty of a doctor is to look after the patient. The duty of an engineer is to do his work in a right way. The duty of a student is to study. So all these duties are mind originated. If you go to the higher level of consciousness in the spiritual world, duties don't count at all. This is very important thing that one has to understand. This is what the Gita says. He has told you earlier, if you want, remember, I have a duty to my family. I have to earn money and support my younger brothers and sisters and allow them to. It's my duty. I have to look after my parents when they are old. That's my duty. But suppose there is a higher call, okay? Suppose your nation is telling you that you have to fight for the nation, which is something much bigger than your own family. The higher call will take precedence over the lower call. Okay, so duty now becomes irrelevant. And the highest call, not only call to the nation, but the highest call is call to God. That takes precedence. I think last time also we have discussed this. That was from the answers to Mrinalini, okay, who is accusing him of not looking after her and maintaining her. He's not earning. In fact, he gave up that magnificent, very good salary he was getting in Baroda with the Maharaja. He was getting 800 rupees at that time would now be a huge amount, maybe 8 lakhs. But at that time it was a big amount. He gave it up and came to Calcutta, and he was offered the post of principal of the National College. Now it is Jadavpur University. So he took it up at 150 rupees a month. Where is the difference between 800 and 150? So, but he gave up his duty of looking after his own family, and he went. The call of the nation was more strong to him. Later on, the call of the nation also became less, and the call of God became more. So, duty is something that you have to do when you are at a mental level. Okay. So now this is what if you tell him that no, do your duty because you are a Kshatriya, it is your duty to kill your enemy. So he will want to know who is he. Arjuna will want to know which is his duty and how can it be his duty to destroy in a sanguinary massacre his kin, his race and his country. Okay. Sanguinary involving blood, okay, bloody. Okay. In a sanguinary massacre his kin, his race and his country. And you answer him again and say, okay, you are saying that, but you are in the right because your enemy is the wrong, in the wrong. So he is told that he is in the right on his side. But that does not and cannot satisfy him because his very point is that the justice of the legal claim does not justify him in supporting it by pitiless massacre destructive to the future of his nation. In the Gita, he answers, all right, even if I am on the right, I don't care because I don't want to enjoy a kingdom which is blood stained. How can I enjoy anything which is blood stained? I can't. So then again, it's a conversation in this para between Arjuna with his standpoint and the opponent who is telling him. You can take the opponent as Sri Krishna himself. Okay. So it is then easy then to act dispassionately. So what is meant by dispassionate? Is it then to act dispassionately in the sense of not caring whether it's a sin or what its consequences may be, so long as it does its duty as a soldier, you must not care for the consequences. You are talking of blood-stained enjoyment, but don't worry about blood-stained enjoyment. Those are the results. Just do your duty. Your duty is to be a Kshatriya. This is a argument and counter-argument between Arjuna, who is standing his ground, and the one who is telling him that he is wrong, and going on giving one by one different arguments. That's what Srendra is doing in the fire. Okay. So, easy. So, what he is saying, this may be the teaching of a state, of politicians, of lawyers, of ethical casuists. Now, the word casuist, casuistry is a noun. It means a double talk, ambivalent talk, equivocation. You say something which can be interpreted in two ways. Okay? So, what is that? He's telling that do your duty dispassionately. In other words, kill, but without emotion. So Srendra is saying that is the worst possible advice you can give to somebody, because if you are in the mental consciousness, your duty to kill. Okay, that is not the way to do it. You have to rise to another level of consciousness. So Srendra is saying, if that is the argument of the Gita, then the Gita can be thrown into the dustbin. Okay, that's what he's saying in a very ironical manner in the last sentence. That may be the teaching of a state, because the state is politics, and politics doesn't care for truth. They always give you arguments which are absolutely false to justify their own action. That's what Srendra is saying. That may be the teaching of a state, of politicians, of lawyers who are always arguing with wrong arguments, of ethical casuists. A casuist is one who uses casuistry. He uses double talk. Okay. Double talk means you can interpret this way and that way. He's saying something, but he actually means something else. It can never be the teaching of a great and religious philosophical scripture which sets out to solve the problem of life and action from the very roots. Okay? Note that. The Gita is not telling you that if you are in the mental world, do your duty. Not telling you that. It is telling you to rise to another level of consciousness. And if that is what the Gita has to say on a most poignant moral and spiritual problem, we must put it out of the list of the world's great scriptures and thrust it. Look at the word thrust. If anywhere. You can put it anywhere you want, but definitely you have to thrust it if anywhere. Then out, then into our library of political science. That's an advice which politicians will give you, not the Gita. And what is that advice? Do what you have to do, even if you are in the mental consciousness. Certainly not. When you are in the mental consciousness, of course you have to follow the mental rules. They are valid for you. So at that level, he is what Arjuna is saying is valid. But if you go to another level of consciousness, that's not valid anymore at all. So this is what Srendra is saying. All these arguments for him to continue to be in the physical mental consciousness and still go about killing is not acceptable. That's not what the Gita is telling. The Gita is telling you not duty, but a call of the divine on you, and then you do your duty. It doesn't become a duty anymore, it becomes an obedience to the Lord. That's the difference between a duty and obedience to the Lord. It's not a duty anymore. Your duty to family, to nation, all disappears. Okay. This is something that he repeats elsewhere also, that when there is a call, the lower call, fine if you are in that consciousness. But when there is a higher call, as I told you about the nation, that takes a precedence over the lower. And when finally the divine calls you, that's the highest call, and all other duties in the physical world have no value at all. They have a value for those who are living in the lower consciousness, and they can complain also. But it is not valid in spiritual life. I think I told you about Madan Lal, na? Madan Lal was a gentleman who came from UP. He was a Hindi-speaking man, and he wanted a spiritual life. He had family, he had sons, okay, he had children, and he came away because the call was very strong in him. He used to live, I think I told you last time, in the children's dispensary. He used to live there, and he used to play tennis with us. But his family came in the 30s and insisted and told Sri Aurobindo, send our father back. We want him back. He has to do his duty. What did Sri Aurobindo say? It is absolutely up to Madan Lal to decide which call he will obey. If Madan Lal himself wants to go back and support his family, he is perfectly he's perfectly right to do that. But he doesn't want to do that. So I will support him because his call is greater than the family duty. This family stayed on for about 2-3 months, going on trying to convince their father that he should go back, but he refused. And Sri Aurobindo was supporting him. So that's very typical example of what is being said here. Okay? Clear, huh?
Rangada, one question.
Tell me.
One question. The call comes when the psychic being is ready, or how? I mean, otherwise, how you can say? Because
Okay, no. So you can't know what the real call is unless you change your consciousness. You have to change your consciousness from a lower level to a higher level. Now, definitely when your psychic comes forward, you will obey because that will guide you. Okay? That will guide you. But what is being spoken here is of the higher mind, not the psychic being. But the psychic being also will definitely, although when you get the psychic mind, you are not necessarily in the higher mind. Okay? Your mental things continue. But there is a certain purification that takes place in the mental, vital, and even the body. Okay? The psychic causes all these purifications. There is purification that takes place in the body. There are reactions in the body. Okay? You will feel all sorts of changes in the body. You will feel changes in your vital. Those things which you had suddenly start disappearing. Your mind also starts obeying the call of the psychic, because the psychic is always turned to the truth. So, but here, in this particular, he is telling you to go to another level of consciousness higher than the mind. Okay? There is a slight difference. But your question, Pallavi, is that if the psychic comes forward, yes, you will be guided correctly. There is no doubt about it. But here, Arjuna is being told to rise to another level of consciousness, lose his mental ideas of what is right and wrong, morality, rise above morality and good and bad. Okay. That's
but
it.
Rangada, it can't be done instantaneously, right?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's a very slow and long process. Absolutely. But in the Gita, it is the principle is being given to you, and Sri Krishna maybe will take him temporarily to higher because he has the power to do that. There are all these problems are there in the Gita which you have to understand. For instance, I'll give you one very, very physical thing. The Gita, if you read from chapter 1, verse 1 to the last one in the 18th chapter, the last one, if you read, it will take you 2 hours. Now, when in the physical world, you have to see the symbolic thing. Okay, so in the middle of a battle, suddenly Arjuna says, "I want to go to the middle," and is it possible for him to stay there for 2 hours? The enemy will start the war. So you can't always interpret these things in the physical world. They are symbolic truths. Okay, so what Arjuna is being told by Sri Krishna, you have to rise to another level of consciousness from there you find. And then he explains to him a long time and he understands. He understands and agrees to do it. So, in fact, like like the Sanjay also, na? Sanjay is given the Divya Drishti so that he can describe the full Mahabharata, the Kurukshetra war to the Kaurava's father. What's his name?
Dhritarashtra.
Dhritarashtra. That's right. So, but after that, maybe he loses that capacity. It's a Divya Chakshu that is given to him. Okay? So, you have to understand that many of these things can't be interpreted physically. They are symbolic truths. Of course, it takes time to rise to the higher level. This is something that there are people who don't understand also. The other day in another class in the synthesis, someone was asking, but this is so difficult. Of course it is difficult. Who is saying it is easy? Nothing in yoga is easy. It takes time. But you get the principle. You understand the principle and you try for it. It may take you 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, one lifetime. It may take you. But doesn't matter. You have to tenaciously and obstinately continue to want what you want to do. Otherwise, it won't. Just a little bit of effort and you give it up, that won't do at all. Okay?
May I ask a
But
question, please?
one
Go
question.
ahead. Go ahead.
May I ask?
Yes, tell me.
You know, when we were under the British rule,
Yeah.
the British, they hired the Indians themselves
Yes,
to form the army.
that's
Okay?
right. Yeah.
So we had Indian soldiers
Yes.
who would hit and kill our own Indians.
Yes, that's what happened.
Yeah. And I believe the people of Hong Kong detested that, and that is why they never like Indians, because they say, you Indians have killed your own Indians under the British rule. We never did that.
Yeah. So, if you see physically, the reason for that is India was so poor that there were no opportunities even for employment. So when an opportunity is given to earn living, you take it with both hands, and even everything that you have, you take it. Let me tell you one thing very interesting. Even today, the poverty level in India, although we are now much better condition than before, and we are now the fourth or fifth largest, richest nation in the world, but still, and in another 10 years, we will become the second richest. Is growing at that rate. But even today, when the army asks for recruits in the army and they want only 1,000, 10,000 apply even today. Okay, so that is one of the things that they do. And then once they are in that, they have to do it. They have to kill their own people, because if they don't do, they'll be discharged and they lose their earning. So that is physical aspect of it is there. Let me tell you an interesting story. Okay, there was this railway protection force. Okay, and the railway protection force is a semi-military organization, and there's a lot of looting that goes on in the railways, goods and things. So there's a railway protection force. That group came to Pondicherry, and our young boys, they were very all immature. I was also there in that when the question was asked to him. So one of our children asked one of the Bengalis, yeah, what made you select this job? Okay, it is full of violence and all that. So what made you select that job? You know what his answer was? Petek dai. If you know Bengali, the necessity of filling my stomach. That was his answer. Okay, petek dai. I had to do it because it's necessary. So this is what happened with the British and the Indian soldiers. But let me tell you, after Sri Aurobindo's and the Bengal Revolution, I am reading now the stories, it's fantastic. And also Subhash Bose, okay. The army realized that they have to fight for their own country. And in 1945, after the war, the Navy revolted. Okay. So the soldiers in the Navy understood that they can't serve the British anymore. And there was a Jabalpur also, there was a uprising. As soon as this double uprising arose, okay, in the Navy in Bombay and in Jabalpur, the army, the British understood that their time is up. And they left. They decided to leave. But deciding to leave was not that easy, because Churchill was in power up to the war. But when they had elections, Churchill was removed by the divine and the Labour Party came in. Okay, Ramsay MacDonald. He came and they decided immediately that they have to leave, because it will be impossible to fight the Indian army which they themselves have raised. They will not be able to fight because of 1 million soldiers and the British are only several thousand. So they had to leave in a hurry. And the hurry was so horribly hurried that the partition, okay, the lines of partition were drawn in 15-20 days without due consideration of what is what. And what was the result? 10 million refugees and so many people died. Okay, there was massive. It's one of the largest events in history, the partition of India. Okay, it's unbelievable what happened. Killings and whatnot from both sides. Muslims from India are going to Pakistan and Hindus from Pakistan are coming here. It was a terrible situation. So, but they left in a hurry. And after India became free, Ramsay MacDonald once came to India. Okay. And he was talking to Subhash Bose's family. He was having dinner with them after 1947. And one of them asked him, "What made you people go away? Was it Gandhi?" And he replied, "Gandhi's effect was minimal. He is non-violent. How does it bother us? We just put him in jail, finished." It was Subhash Bose, Subhash Bose, Subhash Bose. He repeated 3 times. It was he that caused this problem, and we had to leave in a hurry because we knew that we could not stay on anymore. Okay, so when the Indians were under the British, they were forced to do that because of their economic condition. You raise an interesting question. That's why I went into a little more in detail about it. Okay, so we read the next one. Undoubtedly, it's a small para. If Gita is ready and she is ready, she can read. She said that she'll read the second one. So this para is clear, na? The Arjuna is saying, when I am in the mental consciousness, he's not saying that, but he is implying, I am in the mental consciousness, there is sin and virtue for me, and it is impossible for me to resort to sin. I will do virtue, but if I do virtue, I am giving up my duty as a soldier. So the argument between them goes on, and finally they tell you that the Gita is not telling you to do your duty when you are in the physical world, but you have to rise up to another level of consciousness, and then your values change entirely. At that time, you obey the divine. Okay? So, if Gita is ready, she can read. If she is not there, because she is
Undoubtedly,
okay, go
the
ahead.
Gita does, like the Upanishads, teach the equality which rises above sin and virtue, beyond good and evil, but only as a part of the Brahmic consciousness and for the man who is on the path and advanced enough to fulfill the supreme rule. It does not preach indifference to good and evil for the ordinary life of man, where such a doctrine would have the most pernicious consequences. On the contrary, it affirms that the doers of evil shall not attain to God. Therefore, if Arjuna simply seeks to fulfill in the best way the ordinary law of man's life, disinterested performance of what he feels to be a sin, a thing of hell, will not help him, even though that sin be his duty as a soldier. He must refrain from what his conscience abhors, though 1,000 duties were shattered to pieces.
Yeah. Okay, so he is developing the thing further, and that's exactly what we have said, that so long as you are in the mental consciousness, the values in the mental consciousness are valid for you. Okay, morality is valid. The Gita is not telling you that even if you are in the in your mental condition and morality, don't think that you can go about doing disinterested work. It's not possible to do disinterested work. You may pretend to be doing disinterested work, but you can't do disinterested work when you are in the physical work, physical mental consciousness. That's what is being said. Because if you do that, then there will be consequences. It's only when the consciousness rises out of the body-mind life that the law of karma applies to the body-mind life, but not to the soul, because it has risen to another level. And the law of karma will apply to that level, but not in the physical level. This is a very interesting thing, because the law of karma is something that whatever you have done in the past is going to determine your future. This is the law of causation. or you can call it the law of karma. Okay. It's a very interesting thing, and the law of karma also can be discussed, and it can be one of the subjects which Yasmin is asking me to do. But it's very interesting because there's a fantastic sentence in Savitri describing this. Okay. I'll tell you what the words are, exactly not the word, but the idea. Sri says that the past is always influencing your present, and the present is influencing your future. In other words, you yourself are master of your own destiny. There are many ideas which say that destiny is determining you, you can do nothing about it. Totally wrong. Okay? There is an element of truth in that. But you are free to do what you want to do. You have the right to develop yourself. Nothing is being imposed on you. Even the spiritual life, you have to decide yourself that you want it. So Sri says, the dead past, very interesting sentence, just see. The dead past comes to slay the living soul. The dead past, what we have done in the past, comes and affects your present. So, and he puts in such a fantastic poetic line.
What is the
Oxymoron.
word?
Pardon?
What is the word you said? I missed the word.
Okay. The dead past, what you have done in the past, the dead past comes to slay, to kill, slay, kill the living soul. Something which is dead is going to affect something which is living. It's there in Savitri. Okay, so this is law. So poetry is absolutely unbelievable. He puts it in such an interesting way, but this is the law of karma. So, if Arjuna is in the physical consciousness of the mind, the Gita is not telling him to do disinterested work. It makes no sense at all. Because if he does that, very merrily I am a Kshatriya, so I'll go on killing everybody without any interest, whether the thing is right or wrong, disinterested. I'm not worried about morality, I am not saying. You will be absolutely, you will do the worst possible things. That is not what the Gita is advising you to do. Gita's advice is, so long as you are in the moral field, those laws in the morality are applicable to you. When you rise to the higher level of consciousness, the lower laws are not valid to you. The laws in that field of your higher mind, they are applicable to you. And as you keep rising higher and higher, the laws go on changing and becoming more and more wide and more wide, until finally, when you reach to the highest level of the supermind, no laws at all. No laws. You are completely free. Note interestingly that freedom and law are opposites. As soon as there is a law, it is limiting your freedom. Okay. So this is what is being said in this para. Okay. So this is what is saying. Ultimately, that last sentence is very interesting. He must refrain from what his conscience abhors, though 1,000 duties were shattered to pieces. The lower duties completely get absolutely without value. They become valueless. But for that, you have to rise to another level of consciousness. Okay? So, would you like to go
But this can be duped also, no?
Pardon?
You can be duped by this also, no? When you don't like your lower duties, you dupe that, like your duties when you are not liking.
Absolutely. That is the definition of ignorance. When you are in ignorance, you are duping yourself all the time. It's not only in this case. Even when you think that you are doing something with the right attitude, you are actually doing it with the wrong attitude. Duping is another word for ignorance. Okay? You dupe yourself. And when you dupe others, you are doing it consciously. When you dupe yourself, you are doing it unconsciously.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I feel
Yeah.
example is a servant. A servant will do the job or the duty because you have to do. So they have to sweep and swap, but they'll do it in such a shabby, imperfect manner.
Yes.
But if we were to do it and if we make it as an offering to the divine,
Yes.
You will do the same sweeping and swabbing and
Yes.
try to put more perfection in it.
That's
And
right.
I think that is all life is yoga.
That's right. You're right. It's a slow process. It can't be done immediately. And you have to go on asking for guidance. Guide me so that I do the right action. And you will continue to do the wrong action. But the wrong action will actually help you sometimes. Okay, it's very interesting. It is not that you are doing wrong all the time. Even as Sri Aurobindo says in very clearly in the synthesis, if you remember, the error is ever a handmaiden of truth. Okay, so when you make a mistake, don't start blaming yourself. You realize that it's a mistake, and then you realize that, oh, this was a mistake. So now you have made a progress. Now you know. So mistakes are to be used as instruments of progress and not get stuck in the error and go on justifying yourself. Okay, so duping is there, but if you are very, very sincere, and that sincerity also is never perfect, that also is a gradually developing thing. But the determination of the soul is what matters. And if you are determined in the soul, that's why Sri Aurobindo says, be sure of your call. If you are not sure of your call, don't jump into it by a mental attraction or a vital attraction. You will fail. So that's why he used to tell so many people who used to ask, we want to come to Pondicherry and do your yoga. He says, first purify yourself, you are not yet ready. Send me a photograph. And with the photograph, he used to see and advise them, because through the photograph, he will know that person what his condition is, consciousness. And then he will tell him, yes, you can come. Or you have to go and remain in the physical world, but try to purify yourself. Lead a moral life, develop yourself, and then come. And he used to allow. Pardon?
But why they need photograph? He don't knows, no. He knows.
I didn't follow. Sorry.
No, no. Why do they need a photograph also? And
Oh.
like he's
Okay.
all no, he knows, no, without seeing the photograph also he knows, no. Why do you need a photograph?
Okay, it's a good question. But if you need a photograph, it's very easy to make the connection. Okay. If I want to talk to somebody, I have to use first of all a phone with a line connecting the two. Okay. But the line can disappear, but yet I have a mobile. Okay. I have a mobile, but I can talk to somebody even without a mobile, but it is much more difficult. So if Sri Aurobindo has to concentrate and see what is the condition of that aspirant who is writing a letter to him, he needs a physical support, it becomes 10 times easier. But if the physical support is not there, then he has to use his spiritual power and he has to put in a lot of effort. Not worth it.
Okay.
That's the thing.
Okay.
You follow what I'm saying, no?
Yeah.
So that's why a photograph makes it easy.
No, even for the Lord, that's what I'm thinking. Like for us, yeah, when we see, then we can connect or things like that. But even for him, it is like that. That is what I'm thinking.
But it may become a nimit matra. Like for the physical world, they have to,
Yeah.
I don't know,
easier.
believe also.
It becomes easier. Okay. So.
Hello.
Yeah, tell me.
When the children are admitted to the ashram school, we have to give a photo.
Yes, that's right.
So, are people going to see the child's photo and see the child's consciousness?
Today?
Yes.
Not today.
Now it's not like that at all. Because who has got the capacity to judge from a photograph? Nobody. Okay. Maybe if Nolida was there, he would have been able to do it. Okay. But nobody is in that consciousness anymore. So you have to. Now the standard is, if you are connected with a family who is a devotee. Okay. That's mainly the criterion. The criterion has come down to the level of the physical. If your parents know what Sri Aurobindo is and if they have got some connection with the ashram, then it's okay. That's why you are asked to recommend. Get recommendations from those who are in the ashram. By the way, in Delhi, Tara, what she does? She doesn't go by recommendations. But what she does, they interview not the child, but the parents. It's an interesting way. They interview the parents to see what they want from the child and whether they know anything about mother and Swayambhu. So these are the lesser values. But when mother and Swayambhu is a totally different thing. Okay.
But in Bombay, the
Ah.
parents and sometimes even grandparents are interviewed.
Yeah.
And the child is interviewed. You
Oh.
can imagine that 2 or 3-year-old child has
Acha.
to go and answer questions regarding colors, this, that.
Acha.
So it is so toxic, the school
Uh-huh.
admission
Uh-huh.
is a terrible thing. Multiple interviews, imagine at the age of 3.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so we have only 2-3 minutes left, so we will leave this para. But if you think you want to do it, because the idea of duty is being discussed here. The other day, Shilpa was asking me about duty, and so we had a discussion on that. So this next para, we have got 3 minutes. Would you like to read it? If you want to read it, we have to hurry up. We must remember.
We'll do it next. We'll do next.
Okay, we'll do it next. So,
Rangada,
yeah, tell me.
I was saying that about that photo thing which Tarikadi was asking.
Yes.
In several places, Sherwind has mentioned, especially in Life Divine, I think that even if the avatar works at the physical level or the vital level, he follows the rules of that level, that stage. So maybe that's why for them also, they had also to follow the rules that yes, they need a physical connection, though they could do it without the physical connection
Yes.
also.
I'll add only one thing to what Arjuna is saying. What Arjuna is saying is absolutely correct. But that which they are following in the physical world has to be dictated not by the mind but by the divine. That's the only difference. Yeah. So if the divine is telling you that you can do this in the normal human values, do it. That's what he says very clearly. But if the divine says that no, don't follow the normal human values, then you don't do it.
Then you don't.
Yeah, exactly. So that is the only difference which Swayambhu says. It is not the mind that decides, but it is the higher consciousness that decides. Okay? Okay, so we'll stop here today. And
Hello. By
Yes.
looking at the photo, can a evolved soul see the aura of that person?
Yes, not only aura, even the nature of the person. Yes, certainly, Mother could do that. She would make the connection because the photograph acts as a connection between the consciousness of the person and the photograph. And through that, they can see that. This is something very ordinary. It's not something fantastic. I told you, in America, they use psychics for that. Okay. Suppose some child is missing, and family, the parents go to the police call in a psychic, and the psychic will touch something which this missing person has used. Through that, they make the connection and then they can do it. It's not something very, very fantastically spiritual. It's a vital power. Okay? That can be done. We must do it. Okay.
Merci beaucoup.
Au revoir. Au revoir, Rangada. Merci.
Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day.